Coming Back is a listener-supported podcast. To support the show and receive weekly grief guidance from me, monthly group grief support calls, and the first look at upcoming books, online courses, and projects, become a patron now at patreon.com/ShelbyForsythia. Just $3 a month gets you access to everything there is to see on Patreon, plus connection to a beautiful group of grievers just like you. Unlock grief support now for $3 a month and support this show at patreon.com/ShelbyForsythia. Thank you so much for listening. Hi there, grief growers, and welcome to the Season 9 finale of Coming Back. It has been 12 incredible weeks of conversation, sharing, and love, and I am so honored, as always, to have spent this time with you, especially with the state of the world right now. If you follow me on social media, you know that I recently packed up and moved from Chicago to Washington State. This continues to be an intuitive and desired move. I definitely wanted this change to happen, and simultaneously there was also grief in leaving a place that I've called home for the first 6 years after my mom's death. New beginnings are almost always laced with some kind of grief. And as I was driving across the country, I had this thought that grief is a state of transition, being suspended between a start and an end, always hanging in this middle space of day 2 between day 1 and day 3. When we become grieving people, we are forever suspended in some kind of transitional space. It's not always big, and it's not always obvious to us, but we're always holding on to the loss that we faced while we're continuing to move forward. Grief is a state of transition. To be grieving is to always be in a state of transition. It's to have loved ones here and simultaneously loved ones not here. To have dreams here and dreams simultaneously not here. And to have love here and simultaneously to have love not here. It's like our life before loss is one cliff. Life with grief is a long, narrow suspension bridge. And the other side of the bridge, the other cliff that we're walking towards, is our own inevitable death. The whole way that we're walking, we are learning to balance our memory of the steady and sturdy known of our life before loss, that old cliff that we stepped off of, with each and every new step in the after. Grief is definitely a straddling of two worlds, and so much of grieving is learning how to find something that looks like balance in that space. I don't know that any of us is ever 100% okay in our life after loss. Nothing is exactly like we want it or envision it to be, or how we envisioned it in our old life, and that's exactly what's supposed to happen with grief. We are no longer standing on solid ground. We are walking that suspension bridge with grief in tow. With grief, there's always something left unfinished. There's something that still needs to be accomplished. There's something to remember, and there's also something to strive for. And we do our very best to marry all of this together while we're alive, and then one day we die. There's no end to the experience of grief. There's just a strengthening of our ability to balance the weight of it. The world is in a state of transition right now with the emergence and continuation of COVID-19, especially here in the United States, the powerful protests that are calling for social, economic, and political change through Black Lives Matter, and the looming dread of an upcoming election less than 100 days away. We are all in some form or another learning to balance in the midst of transition. I started this podcast to prove to myself and others that there are ways to come back from the very worst things that have ever happened to us, and proof that one person is doing the hard work of balancing across that rickety suspension bridge of grief gives us hope that one day we might be able to do the same. If you're feeling hopeless right now, please continue tuning into the stories of others here on Coming Back and elsewhere. The stories that are shared here are not stories from special people who have mastered grief. We are all humans who have suffered massive loss and are walking the same suspension bridge that you now find yourself on. You are not alone. In fact, the boards that are underneath your feet right now have been tread by hundreds and thousands of grievers before you. And grief growers, if you are not feeling so helpless right now, and you've got some strength in your legs and some confidence in your spirit as you walk across this bridge, I encourage you to look around, pause, look around, and offer a hand or a book or financial support to someone who is not so far along on their journey with grief. Especially in this moment in time, the more that we can see each other and support each other on the journey, the better off that we'll all be. For a list of wonderful grief organizations, including Black-owned grief supporters and queer-owned grief supporters, feel free to email me at shelby@shelbyforsythia.com, because there are so many ways to get involved with others in the grief space who may have their voices suppressed or marginalized or unseen. I thank you so much, as always, for tuning into another season of Coming Back. I am so honored to continue making this space for all of us to share what it's like to live in the perpetual state of transition that is grief. Before I go, I want to fill you in on a few things that are coming your way, grief growers. First off, my best-selling online course, Life After Loss Academy, is launching one more time in 2020 on August 31st. If you have been unable to afford the course in the past, or maybe it just wasn't a good time for you, listen in. Because of the continuing COVID-19 pandemic and the very, very real reality of financial loss in this uncertain time, I have dropped the cost of Life After Loss Academy to just $450 for the whole 12-week program. This is not 3 payments of $450. This is $450 for the full 12 weeks. And I know that this is a ridiculous decrease in cost. This whole course is worth about $3,200, and I normally offer the course for upwards of $1,000. But I know, especially right now, that the more affordable grief support is, that's what people need more than ever right now. In this online grief support course, you will learn how to feel safe in the world again, especially in a world we're living in now, a world where anything can happen. You'll learn to release yourself from the anxiety of needing to get grief right, and stop comparing yourself to other people who are grieving, and learn how to integrate your biggest losses into the full picture of your life. I can help you find ways to grieve the person that you used to be, ditch negative self-talk and perfectionism in grief, and develop a script for sharing your grief story with others who may or may not know how to hold appropriate space for your loss. There is literally so much jam-packed into this 12-week course, and it all starts on August 31st. And for the sake of all of us and all of our griefs, the course concludes the week before Thanksgiving. So everyone who's enrolled in the course, including myself, as the guide, is able to rest and reserve energy for the holiday season, which will be like no other holiday season that we have seen before. In fact, Life After Loss Academy might just be the best thing to prepare you for a Thanksgiving, Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, or New Year's in the wildness and uncertainty that is and continues to be the year 2020. For more information and to enroll in Life After Loss Academy today, you can visit the link in the show notes or shelbyforsythia.com. And if you've previously enrolled in Life After Loss Academy at a higher rate, please email me. I am so happy to welcome you into the August 31st course again for no additional charge if you'd like to get a course refresher, or I can also open up a scholarship space in your name for a griever in need. Between now and the launch of Season 10, you can join me for live grief support over on my Patreon page on July 27th and August 24th at 7 p.m. Central Time. These are hour-long monthly conversations where I take your questions and thoughts on grief, and we can all share resources and helpful tips for coming back. You can become a patron of my work at patreon.com/shelbyforsythia for as little as $3 a month to unlock the link to join us live. And when you pledge, you'll also unlock access to over 100 private posts, including weekly grief guidance prompts and access to your very own copy of my first book, Permission to Grieve. On the subject of books, I need to make one more soft announcement that I have a new book coming your way in mid-September. I'm working with a major publishing house, so I'm not yet allowed to release the title or the exact launch date because we still don't quite know yet what either of those will be, but know that this book is a heartfelt, practical daily devotional for walking through grief for an entire year. It is not religious, and it is not really woo-woo or kind of up in the clouds. It's a combination of quotes from my favorite grief experts, authors, and celebrities, as well as a ton of intuitive and practical guidance for integrating grief into your life. These are real, tangible exercises for really grounding yourself in the experience of grief and possibly as well releasing the pain that life without somebody that you love can bring about in your life. Because season 10 of Coming Back doesn't start until September 2nd, the very best way to get updates on this book is to follow me on Facebook at Shelby Forsythia Intuitive Grief Guide or Instagram at Shelby Forsythia, because I'll be making announcements there as I find out more information about when exactly the book is going to be heading your way. And I cannot wait to hear what you think, grief growers. And that's all I have for you for the Season 9 finale of Coming Back. I am so grateful that you choose to tune into this one-woman show. I'm taking a break here for a little bit to settle into my new space in Washington, to welcome new students to Life After Loss Academy, and finalize the details of this upcoming book. But know that there are some wonderful interviews slated to come your way already in Season 10. And those conversations will start on Wednesday, September 2nd. As always, I am holding space for you in the midst of transition. So that's all for this episode and this season of Coming Back. Thank you so much to the guests who joined me this season: Jan Warner, Cheryl Strayed, Kevin Ringstaff, Kelly Lynn, Lindsay Whistle-Fenton, Katie Arnold, Rachel Wilkinson, Denise Soler-Cox, Lindsay Joy Taylor, Dr. Jen Hardy, and Melissa Botworth-Airy. Season 10 of Coming Back debuts on September 2nd, 2020, but in the meantime, you can always sign up for email updates and to get the first chapter of my book Permission to Grieve at shelbyforsythia.com. In addition to that first chapter of my book, you'll get a ton of free resources for grief support online. Also, be sure to enroll now for the next session of Life After Loss Academy, which begins August 31st and goes through mid-November. This intensive 12-week experience will help you feel grounded in an uncertain world, say goodbye to the pressure of getting grief right or perfect, and love the life that devastating loss has forced you to live. All losses are welcome, no matter how much time has passed. You can find out more at shelbyforsythia.com or by following the link in the show notes. If you liked what you heard on Season 9 of Coming Back, support the show by becoming a patron at patreon.com/shelbyforsythia. Just a reminder that our next grief support calls are happening July 27th and August 24th. You can also support Coming Back by subscribing to and leaving a review of the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Stitcher, following me on Facebook at Shelby Forsythia Intuitive Grief Guide or Instagram at Shelby Forsythia, and above all else, the very best thing you can do is share Coming Back with a friend, because you never know what someone you love is going through. A big thank you, as always, to Addie Goldstein, who composed our theme music. As always, my dear grief growers, it was beautiful sharing this space and time with you today. I see you. I am so proud of you and the work that you're doing in the world. And I love you. Because even through grief, we are growing. See you in Season 10.